Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into Facilities in Focus. It's always a joy to be a part of your journey on the internet. My name is Mackenna Moralez, and I am the managing editor of FacilitiesNet and your host of this very podcast. In our fifth season, we are covering all things healthcare, and we all know that there is a demand for healthcare facilities since the COVID-19 pandemic. And while we're not necessarily going to be talking about healthcare facilities specifically today, I thought there was no one better to talk about construction and renovation with than former building operating management cover star Brian Cowperthwaite. And I told you I was going to do that before our call started, but
That was perfect.
Thank you. But Brian started at the Medical College of Wisconsin in March 2025 as the Vice President of Facilities and Operations and has over 20 years of leadership experience in the private sector, U.S. Marine Corps, and research-focused higher education. In his current role, he directs and oversees all facilities and campus operational activities, including facilities, engineering and maintenance, planning, design and construction, public safety, and environmental health and safety to meet a safe, productive, and efficient environment for all of MCW stakeholders. Brian also works with executives in planning and executing building projects and major renovations and ensuring excellence of all facilities operations. But thank you so much for joining me today, Brian. How are you?
Terrific. Really glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
As I just told you before we started the interview, I'm located just around the corner from you.
Yes.
And at least our buildings are not our actual homes. But I know that the Medical College of Wisconsin is seemingly always under construction or some type of renovation in a very positive way. So,
Yes.
But how do you plan all these projects to ensure that learning is not interrupted at all, especially because it is a learning campus?
A quick break to thank our 3 Season 5 sponsors, ABM, Orkin, and PointCore. Here's a quick message from all 3 sponsors. Pests hate us. Businesses love us. Orkin helps keep your facility ahead of pest pressures with practical, proven protection tailored to your needs. Healthcare facilities are demanding environments. Thankfully, ABM provides peace of mind with IAQ, efficient HVAC, and tech-enabled predictive maintenance. Learn more at abm.com/care. This episode is brought to you by PointCore, delivering facilities and construction solutions for healthcare that help organizations strengthen performance and support exceptional care environments. And now, we'll get back to the Facilities in Focus podcast.
Yeah, thanks. So it's funny you said that we're always under construction. As one of the researchers or doctors the other day said to me, how come we never have money for anything, but always see your cranes everywhere building stuff? So good question. You're right on the money with that. To make sure we don't interrupt things, I think over communicate, don't outthink the room. So a lot of times you just really need to talk to people, above, below, and adjacent. I think they say we have a big renovation project doing some flooring. I think I'd rather build a new building than redo flooring because they have to smash up all this slate and other things. There's nothing neat about it, right? So all we're going to do is bother people. So we literally walk every space and look at every inch and try to figure out where we're going to cut off entrances. How are we going to affect utilities? How about ADA access, fire alarms, fire safety? So I think over communicating and just literally getting out there. A few of us yesterday walked it again. Just literally look at it, but don't outthink the room to make sure you don't interrupt learning. Get out there where the learners are and see what they're dealing with, and hopefully you can find ways not to interrupt them.
Right. And especially with a project like flooring, I'm kind of glad that you brought that up because I find flooring projects to be very interesting. I think people really underestimate how important flooring is. They're just like, oh, this is the part of the building and whatnot. But flooring can really have an impact on your entire physical body. And after working some pretty hard retail jobs where I felt like I was on just straight concrete all day, I have really appreciated mats in my life. But when you do a flooring project like what you just spoke about, how do you ensure to not bother people? Because I feel like your campus is 365, right? It's all year round.
It's just about all year round. There's, it's definitely open 365. There's somebody here all the time, and it's generally open for students, learners, staff, researchers, faculty. There's always people around. I'd love to say everyone has a huge budget and they're just going to do everything on the weekends in the middle of the night and holidays, but that's not true. So it's just not going to happen. So you try to do the critical areas, some of the key spaces, not to bug people on those times. Again, I feel like most of our faculty, staff, and researchers, they're in it to win it. They're with us. So if we walk in and explain them and talk to them and show them pictures of the end product, they bend over backwards. And I feel that all the time. They'll kind of give us schedules. Can you cut me some slack here and not do anything on these days or this afternoon or this time? So usually they're all on the same team. They're all pulling the same direction. So again, if you kind of communicate with them and you find the few non-negotiables, then you can start addressing some of the vibration, some of the noise. Did you look at every little vent? Did you look at every, like I said, notorious for, I don't want to call it carpenters, but maybe a carpenter doing something and knocking out a fire device and, the alarm's going off or something. So if you already, talked that through, I'd say walk downs all the time. Contractors you trust, that's a big thing too. Easy job, I can use anybody. This is not rocket science, but no, this one, if you suck something into this vent, boy, it's going to the wrong place and I can't have that. So let me, focus on certain mitigation companies that'll come in and tape things off and have a kind of a white glove approach. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but you're going to bug somebody. I'll tell you right now, you're going to annoy somebody with vibration. You're going to get dust in the wrong place. You're going to set off an alarm. But hopefully you can make it less.
It's truly a thankless job, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm sure I'll say it a couple times today, but if you came in the facilities with a thin skin, you picked the wrong business. So
gosh, yeah. It's not the job to be sensitive in.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's just not. If literally all you do is deal with things when people tell you something failed, something's not right, something's ugly, not clean, leaking. So if you don't like to deal with that all day and never have enough money to fix everything and make it pretty, so you're constantly saying no, can't do that. This is the priority. So it's just you find people it's in their blood, and you grab those people, hold on to them for dear life because you want them on your team.
People only care about facilities management when things go wrong. Nobody appreciates you guys when everything's going right.
Yeah, and I worked at the University of Chicago before this, and one of the guys had a sticker on his door that said, "Nobody cares about what I do until I stop doing it." And it was just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of a good, funny thought. So
it is kind of true, though. But you mentioned the vibrations that comes along with renovation and projects. How do you minimize that so it doesn't affect something like research?
Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you need to go from power tools to hand tools. Where if you have any type of sensitive research on site, sometimes they can move it, sometimes they can set it aside, sometimes they can hold off what they do. Other times you can't. So it's, you may be going to a more expensive model to renovate in some cases, or more expensive model to renovate, or hours or things like that. Vibration is a big one. That's a tough one. I can usually take care of dust and noise and staying out of people's way. But sometimes when you got to, smash something up, and to be quite honest, it's a challenge. So again, if you talk to the people you're working with and supporting, they'll have the best ideas. So the researchers lean on them. They'll tell you, hey, you need to do this at this time and we'll be good. So just, again, don't outthink the room. Go to the experts and get their opinion.
Because in my head, when I'm imagining, you're like drilling the floors or whatever, and it's like that scene in Jurassic Park with the Jello, and they're just really trying to focus.
That's true.
But it just keeps on, everything just keeps on shaking more and more.
Yes. Hopefully they built the facility and the research to withstand a little bit of it, but nope, it's part of the job.
Right. What's been I mean, we talked about this a little bit, but has been your biggest challenge in maintaining the learning experience during construction? And what are some like unconventional ways that you handle it?
You know, one of the things that enticed me to come work at MCW was the buildings aren't old. The oldest building is 1976, I believe, the Eye Institute. So that's a lot. I love that. You know, previous role at the University of Chicago, buildings from the 1800s. And they did not do a great deal of ADA or mobility access thought or air conditioning or things like that. So when you're dealing with older buildings, it can it can be a nightmare, and you really need to think through. There's only one route to get up to the upper floors for certain things, and the doors weren't made wide enough for certain equipment or to move things through. So I think older buildings, well, if you're in the facilities, it'll put you to, you know, it'll keep you up at night, really. So I've had some renovation projects in older both research and classroom type buildings, and libraries, where you really got to think through how you're going to move equipment in there, how people are going to get in there, which doors can be unlocked and when. How do you have, okay, this door now needs to be unlocked during hours. I don't normally unlock it to get people in and out, and I got to have security come check it. And then if I take this elevator out of service, nobody can get into this building or get up to floors 2, 3, and 4. Is there another way? So I think, you know, things people don't think about is just the access and logistics of construction and renovation. But especially older buildings. So again, I love MCW because most of our buildings are not old, and somebody has at least given some thought to it. But there's a lot of people out there renovating buildings, and they've just got to get creative how they're going to get things in. No one made anything big enough to swing something into the building in 50 years later. So it can be a thought exercise.
It's a little funny that you say that a building isn't old when it's built in the 1970s.
I'll take it because I go to universities out there. A lot of them would love to have, you know,
Right.
Wow, you have a post World War II building. That's so cool, you know. So,
But when you compare it to like the 1800s, yeah, I think that really does put things in perspective. Especially, I went to college in rural Wisconsin, and there was only in the building that I had biology in, there was only one way to get to the 3rd floor, which is where that class was for everyone. And you had to go up all 3 flights, and I don't care how good of shape you were in, everybody at the top of the stairs were just like, oh, this is just really deep breathing, and it was brutal. I think it has since been renovated since I graduated, but it doesn't really seem fair.
Yeah, it's well, and a lot of, I think of student dorms out there, and we used to call them window shakers. You know, that's their HVAC. There's a old school air conditioning in the window for that pod or whatever, and it's rough. So yeah, there's some real challenges out there.
Yeah. How do you, I mean, you have said you got to talk to people a lot, but how do you coordinate between everybody in the building during a renovation project? Is that like a meeting set up, or is it just constant emails?
It's, you know, that's really the focus is, you know, the faculty, students, staff, researchers. I got to keep them happy. They're the, you know, they're who I work for. So, you know, sometimes the contractors might be a little crabby at me, and that's okay. They're getting paid to be there and kind of work around our schedule. So to me, it is communicating constantly. In some cases, you'll have, you know, daily meetings with kind of just the central staff, the central main core team. You know, they're usually talking about safety and key things for the day. Sometimes weekly meetings with who, hey, if I'm going to bother these researchers, I got to catch up. Here's what we're doing this week over the next few days. Sometimes monthly. So it's a lot of emails, a lot of notifications. It's just you cannot over communicate. You can't. When it tries to keep people happy during a project, updating timeline, status. You know, nowadays, well, you didn't have, you know, a couple decades ago, the shared tools like you do now. Now, you know, now you can just make a box file or online collaboration site, and everybody can see it all the time. You really got to take advantage of the technology because it's out there to keep people updated.
I feel like there's this common misconception that in facilities management, you don't have to communicate with people and that you can kind of do your own thing. And that can be like further from the truth.
Yeah, you can choose not to communicate with people, but they're going to communicate with you once things go wrong. So yeah, you don't have to communicate. Absolutely, you're right on the money there. They're going to
And
light
that
you up.
circles back, like you can't have thin skin in,
Yeah,
in this industry.
you cannot. It's just yeah, that's the truth.
And this is what I'm getting so far. You have to talk to people. You
Yes.
can't be sensitive.
Yeah, I'd love to say it's more complicated than that. You need a special degree in mechanical. Nope, that's not it. You really got to bring people together, break the silos, talk to them. You're going to do things that not everybody loves, so kind of explain it to them so everybody is saying, okay, I'm not happy, but I see why we're doing this. So yeah, it's a lot of communication. It's soft skills. You wouldn't think that maybe with facilities, it's all technical, wrench turning or programming.
Right.
It's a lot of interpersonal skills.
How do you get people on your team to like truly understand that?
It's endless because people get kind of tied up in where they are, right? You can't see the forest through the trees or trees through the forest. So kind of, reiterating how important it is to talk to people. Sometimes I drag people to meetings and they have no idea. Why do I have to go with you? Just come with me. Let's go. Let's sit in and listen and have them there to get a different viewpoint, kind of see things from a different angle. But yeah, people kind of, they get, whether it's, the folks turning the wrenches each day, the mechanics, they get their work orders. I do these work orders. They'll talk to the people, stop in, explain what you're doing if you're going to bother them. And the good side of it, hey, this is, after I do this is what, the benefit. So you just got to kind of keep reinforcing it. We're all human. Some days you feel like talking, some days you don't feel like talking. So it's important.
I'm of the generation that hates to talk on the phone.
I know. I'm well aware. Plenty on my team who would rather send me a text from across the hall than say something to me.
Yeah. Some of my team members, and there's a 30 age difference between some of us, and they'll be like, Mackenna, just call them. And I'll be like,
Yes.
why won't they just answer my email?
I know. It's generational changes and we're all always adjusting.
Yes. What contingency plans are in place if construction impacts critical operations?
I used to have a great boss and he would always say, don't be surprised by the predictable. Don't be surprised by the predictable. He knew it was coming out of his mouth. If you did something and you didn't kind of plan for things to go wrong, in the military, they always say no plan survives initial contact. You plan for forever, then you launch the plan and the plan, is no good on day one. So to me, you kind of plan for a fallback, the critical, the things that are critical. To me, utilities, safety, fire, emergency, if I can keep those things running, and if I can keep those things having a great backup plan, everything else goes wrong, that's okay. Utilities shifted over to the alternate, the HVAC, the cooling, the heating. If those can have a backup plan, we've at least thought through because it always happens. Somebody's going to cut something and they weren't supposed to, and it's a bad situation. But we expected it, we thought through it, and somebody, we've talked about it, whether it was a safety plan that morning, or the alternative, what do we do when this doesn't work? Again, it is, about communication. But yeah, things are not going to go right ever. But the critical, I think you asked the question, critical, that's the key. How do you separate, inconvenienced and aggravated from, hey, my fire alarm's not working. Okay, that's bad news. We can't have that. So how do you kind of prioritize what is critical and not critical? Getting frustrated people versus putting people in harm's way are two different things. So in facilities, we've thought through, keeping people safe and running.
And remind me, you did serve in the Marines?
Yeah,
right?
Yep. It was forever ago, long time ago. Yes. But yes.
Sure. But I feel like a lot of your training there must relate really well to the flexibility of being on the job.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it'll come up once or twice today, but yeah, you kind of grow a thick skin and don't sweat the small stuff kind of mentality. And I think that's a lot of working in facilities, keeping things running.
Would you say that facilities maintenance is more of like a type A job or a type B job? Because there is like a lot of planning that goes
Yeah.
into it, but there's also like you have to be flexible because nothing ever goes as according to plan.
Whether you're a type A or type B personality, I think you're going to need a mix of people on your team. But, in higher education and, here at Medical College of Wisconsin, you're dealing with doctors and researchers, and they don't suffer fools. They are important work to do, and they don't want to hear your excuses. So you're dealing with type A people for good reason. They've got I've got to get this done. And I'm, whether it's teaching people or trying to, do breakthroughs. So yeah, again, back to the thick, thin skin, you need to bring your A game. I mean,
At all times.
You need exactly at all times. And so you need to understand the importance they have and kind of learning to prioritize and take care of the things, and the things that can slide, they slide. But I don't know. I don't know if A or B, that's a good question. You need to be A or B because you're not running the place. You're trying to take care of the place. And to me, that always seems like more of a B. You're trying to support and help the mission.
Right. I know I joked earlier and said that facilities maintenance is a thankless job. I actually really believe it's an unforgiving job, especially in an industry when it comes to healthcare. And granted, you are more on the learning side of things or the education side of things. But if you do one thing wrong, that can really have like a huge impact on the facility. And like we know what that looks like in healthcare facilities, someone could die. What does that mean for the education side of your facility if something does go astray?
Yeah, and things do all the time. That's why we have whole work order systems to track everything. We really try not to affect the students. So that's one of our key when we talk about doing a renovation, a repair, an upgrade. That we sit down and say, how is this going to affect our learners? How is this going to affect faculty? How is this going to affect researchers? Then we, start looking at everything else. But so if we can mitigate, they're trying to get in here, get a top-notch education, and go out and help the world and literally save people. So it's our job to not interrupt them, and to make it, make us a good experience for them too. I mean, it may sound, kind of slushy, but I want them to be happy here and go, I love this section. I love this furniture. I love this walkway, so it's important that this is a good experience for them, school at any level, some of us look fondly at any different level the school went to. We probably have some neat memories. So I, want to make sure we do that as well.
Right, because we had a whole season on education facilities, and Alicia Jolivet said, like, you're building manners to the learning experience. Like, if kids aren't happy with the temperature, they aren't happy with the furniture, like you said, that impacts their learning, and they're not going to have good test scores. They're not going to have a good time. And for so many people, schools and hospitals are safe places for them. And we have joked this entire time, said that you can't be sensitive if you're in facilities, but you have to be empathetic.
Oh yeah. We have, a lot of obviously study spaces throughout campus. Some of them, it's hard for the custodial crews to get in and clean because they're in there studying. I mean, go at midnight. There's somebody in these spaces. So they work their tails off. So, we try to work around them and, kind of help them out, but they love what they're doing. They're dedicating their lives to it. And we want it to be comfortable for them. But it's impressive what some of them are doing to get where they're going.
Right. And I think you have an interesting perspective too, because you're seeing the future doctors, the future researchers. It's like, don't let me mess this up because they might take care of me one day.
That's very true. I think I recognize you, so I might be saying that someday.
A whole new way to look at it.
Yes. Hopefully I didn't tick them off. That would make for a bad situation.
No, that's against the first rule, do no harm. And
That's
I think
right,
that applies to facilities too.
Yes, even the facilities person that shut the heat off on a cold day. So,
Uh, um, how do you, there's so much that goes into construction and renovation, especially in this current environment, but how do you manage supply chains and access routes during construction?
yeah, it's a very little thought out term, right? We're going to do this job, we're going to renovate this. Then you don't think of all the stuff that needs in the equipment and vehicles that need to get up and down. It's a lot of walking, again, whether it's hallways or ground, and kind of walking through and trying to think through all the different things that go into it. Like I mentioned, I was in the military for a long time, and a lot of that was as a supply officer. So I've always got a background in kind of moving funky stuff around or getting things to where they need to, accounting for things. So I think it is kind of in my blood a little bit. So I have a warm place in my heart for kind of people that are in distribution or warehousing or loading docks. There's something about it where they kind of thankless behind the scenes make things happen. But it, it's for the supply chains and getting things where they got to go during a renovation. It is grabbing kind of the people that do it. I don't need middle managers or senior leadership. I need, hey, you move stuff from A to B, or the contractor. What do you have to move down this hall? What times do you have to move it? Yeah, so it's back to the basics. Again, it's kind of those soft skills, people skills, thinking through it critically. I don't need spreadsheets. I don't need, complex engineering degrees or anything like that. I really need to sit down and talk to the people who make it happen and look at the spaces and kind of think, okay, I'm going to annoy somebody if I do that at this time. So how can we move it a different way?
Have you had a lot of supply shortages during some of your projects and starting?
I don't know. We really haven't. During COVID, it was brutal. Yeah, during COVID, everybody had supply chain shortages and we were all hoarding everything. So it was brutal. I think some of us have learned, and even a lot of the supply chains have shifted. Maybe they got something from overseas prior, and now they have 3 different options where to fill supplies. A lot of it's location. Very lucky where we are. Plenty of major airports and distribution routes. I'm sure there's places in the country that struggle. So no, I haven't had a huge problem with supply chain. A lot of it goes into the planning and design of facilities. Do you put weird, custom, unique built door handles from Germany, or do you put something that's readily available and can be swapped out? So a lot of it goes into the level of detail.
I was wondering, because I feel like sometimes some projects happen so fast. Like I know a school is currently being built or retrofitted in like a year timeline, and they're opening up for school next year or next fall. But how far in advance do you usually plan your projects just to build in that kind of buffer when it comes to the supply chain?
It varies. It varies with the type of project. So we're building our first ever student housing here on campus right now. And it started before I got here. So let's say a year and a half ago it started. We don't break ground till this summer. So it's been going on that long. There are some projects in my head that I know we need to do at MCW, and we're already talking about them probably 2029. We need to start thinking through some of the pieces. There are some that will probably kick off next month, and we'll figure it out the week prior. Right. If something fails, you're going to figure it out right then. It's the readiness, availability, what you're doing. If you're doing a whole building, boy, you need some time, especially for some of the research equipment or classroom equipment. It depends how high tech you're getting. Years, it can be years.
I feel like when you're working that far ahead, it's hard to be in the present sometimes.
Yeah, boy, you need project manager or special breed. I don't know how they do it. So, I'm not one by trade, but just you're when you're in facilities, you're stuck being a project manager because you're always small or large. I don't know how they keep so organized. It's definitely hurting cats.
Right. What design features do you tend to prioritize during your construction projects?
Here's
to support future needs. Sorry, I realized I didn't finish the question.
No. That's a great question. They write whole books and articles on this. That's a really good question. now if you ask anybody, it's all about flex spaces and modular and leaning towards technology in the future. What's coming, AI, whether it's, virtual reality or something like that. To me, I kind of always think like when we renovate buildings and existing spaces, what doesn't work? And it's usually IT, right? Hey, we got to fix this because this building no longer supports, whatever, whether it's utilities or it doesn't have the IT space to run all the cabling and Wi-Fi or something. So for me, when we're looking at future buildings, I don't want to repeat the errors of the past. So that's my first, let's not make the dumb mistakes. I don't want someone complaining about who built this and 20 years ago or 20 years later. But it is very modular now. So like I said, they keep saying flex spaces. I'm on the fence with it because we have all these big open flex space. This is everywhere too. Go look at any university. Right. Big open flex. Maybe we all want to be in the big same room, right? Especially like during COVID, there was a lot of that. We're all in a giant open space, and now they're all full of modular offices. They're all these square glass, which we have. Everybody does. So I'm on the fence. Was that a good thing that we could put this in and take it out, or did we not plan well? So I know that's the buzzword is, that it can flex and be modular, but I don't know. Are we going to be talking about, it needs to be purpose built in 20 years? Why do they make all these flex spaces?
Right.
That is where we're leaning, like flexible.
Yeah. We have an open concept office, and it can be brutal sometimes.
Yes. Right. And they're retrofitting it with places where you can have private calls and stuff and put in little glass booths. And
right.
I don't know. There's not a right or wrong answer. Right? It just keeps.
Right. I'm in my all glass room right now. So there's some private areas out here. But can you share an example of a renovation that significantly improved workflow? It doesn't necessarily have to be at the medical college. It can be at a previous job too.
Yeah. So one project I like here, I just caught the last tail end of it, was our basic science building where they renovated the building. And because you look at it from the outside, it's not a new building. But as soon as you come into it, you're like, holy crap, it's all glass. It's beautiful. The labs and spaces, and each of the floors are pretty much the same. So you come in, it's clear glass. You can see into the labs. Around the outside of the building, there's all offices. And they did a great job of, it's limited space building, like Gothic. But it's a little,
yeah.
You can definitely see it was built a while back. Sliding doors to help with space, and every floor flows the same, where you can walk a path, a whole square around the outside to the offices, kind of the shared spaces. No matter what floor you go on, the layout. And then in the middle, there's all these research spaces and labs, interior. And I know the first time I got in that building, I was like, oh, I love this. I've seen enough labs and spaces to know that it is so open, everything's so bright. It was really a great design, and I actually did not see it like it was before, and I'm glad I didn't. But I'm sure it was dark, dismal, with limited light. But now the light from the outside comes right through the glass offices on the outside and right into the middle. So it just gives it a neat feeling. And I think a lot of things. You said workflow or whatever it was, this travel. People don't give enough credence to sometimes sidewalks, skywalks, tunnels, parking. Those things, more easily and quickly and safely you can funnel students and faculty and researchers to where they need to be and make it pleasant. It's a big deal. It really does. People aren't trudging around trying to get to places. So skywalks are expensive, but if you ever look at the regional campus here they connect Children's to Freighter. We all connect, and you can get to just anywhere you need through skywalks or tunnels. We move stuff less discreet or more discreet through the tunnels underneath, and then people flow back and forth. So I think some of that's, just getting to places is really important.
Yeah, and that probably helps with cleaning too, because you're not, we're in Wisconsin. We know that the weather here sucks.
Yes.
You're not trudging snow across all these different buildings if you have a skywalk or a tunnel to get through.
It's a luxury. So I don't know. Years ago, the first time I went to Minneapolis, they had skywalks all over town, and I had lived on the West Coast a lot, and I thought, this is the greatest thing ever. And then you could connect to a lot of the buildings. So I think, it's an investment. Don't get me wrong, skywalks are expensive, but they really connect people, and who wouldn't go to places and talk to other people or do things they do.
Mhm. And then I know that we are running a little short on time, Brian.
Okay.
So I just have 2 questions
Fire away.
for you. But how do you prioritize projects across a large campus with competing needs?
Whoever's yelling the loudest at you is probably what most facilities people will tell you. You've got to work, priority. Years ago, again, a really good boss. I had a product of some great bosses. We wrote a paper called the Infrastructure Resiliency Model, where we kind of laid out thoughts on how do you prioritize, resiliency across campus. We always said it was some matter of redundancy, recoverability, reliability. But you got to have a prioritization process. If you don't have a process, it's just going to be a can of worms. So you've got to come up with processes, and there's never an end to that in facilities. So when you're telling people your project's in, your project's out, your renovation's in, yours out, it's got to be more than so-and-so was louder. Has to talk about the mission of the campus, what it means to people. Sometimes it's return on investment. Sometimes it is, hate to say it's dollars and cents, but sometimes, it's limited resources. And this project is going to have a better return for our students. So we're going to focus on this. So a lot of identifying risks. If you don't know, some of your deferred maintenance and some of the things, the life expectancy of your major systems, whether it's air handlers or elevators, it'll prioritize itself for you. So you better find it and know when you're getting to the end of the life for things. A lot of data. So facilities, probably 25, 30 years ago was less data. Now, oh my goodness, everything's tied into everything. Every building automation system talks to your work order management, talks to your space management, talks to your access management. So there's data at your fingertips if you're willing to kind of pluck it out. But it's an influx. It's a constant discussion, a lot of conversation. Used to tell my team, and worked a while ago, don't nail anything to the floor. And basically the thought was, we're gonna flex, we're gonna move. This has got to move there, that's got to move there. So be willing to change. Priorities change. We're looking at a new president coming in a few months. I don't know if priorities change, but I expect things to shift around. There's different priorities. Leadership has different mandates, and just roll with the punches and go with it and keep the place running. So hope that helps.
Right. That actually kind of answers my last question. It was, what lessons have you learned from past projects that changed how you approach new ones?
Oh my goodness. I always think if I had unlimited money and unlimited time and no schedule, people would still be mad. It didn't matter. People would still be upset with you after you finish something. So hopefully you learn something from projects. I'm kind of the old business book, Jim Collins, Good to Great. Small methodical increases and fixes kind of get you to greatness, and get the right people in the right seats on the bus, I think was something in the book. You have a team, they all have strengths, let them do it. Don't micromanage, let them do their strengths, let them do what they have to do, let other people learn from those that are strong. There's always going to be communications breakdown. But really, I think facilities have this processes. I think if you talk to people that I've worked with over the years, in my brain, you've got to have processes and facilities. There's too much. There's too many things going on, too many inputs, too many requirements, too many needs, so you've got to have prioritizations and use your different systems, use your data, help it guide you. But I think definitely if I'm renovating something, fixing something, I need to have a process from everything from warranty turnover to how do we project turnover to commissioning. Does commissioning mean the same thing to me as it does to them? Because it probably doesn't.
Right.
But yeah, process for me.
Thank you so much, Brian. That's all that I have for you today. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, it's been awesome, Mackenna. Thanks so much. And It's been great working with everybody in the organization over the years, to be honest.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Everyone, I'll link his cover story in the show notes, but remember, don't be sensitive if you're a facility manager and be a little bit flexible with your job. Thanks, Brian. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Facilities in Focus podcast. Facilities in Focus is a product of the facility market, which houses FacilitiesNet, building operating management, facility maintenance decisions, and healthcare facilities today. Thank you to our sound and video editors, Paul Ellertson and Johnson Delapet. Thank you to Morgan Johnson for designing our logo. Thank you to Dan Welton, Dave Lubaugh, Dan Hounsell, Jeff Forden, Elena Myers, Corey Lallo, and everyone else at Trade Press Media Group. And of course, thank you, Dalton, Holden, and Baby Girl. It's always a pleasure to be a part of your journey on the internet. For comments, or if you are interested in being a guest on Facilities in Focus, please email me, Mackenna, at fnpodcast@tradepress.com.